Arganissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today, Arganissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty.
What's up, party people? This is Kwame, and you are rocking with Chatters That Matter right here. Keep it locked. All right, peace.
This is Rick Aaron, and you're watching Chatters That Matter with Dr. Cheryl Bryant Bruce and Hurricane. Keep it locked.
Hey, 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 you know me. It's Dr. Cheryl Bryant Bruce, MD, the celebrity doc. And you are here with Chatters That Matter. Let's talk about it. And I am here with my co-host, my show host, Hisham Elenmati, Hurricane H.
What's up?
And we are here this month for this particular episode celebrating autism awareness. This is a big topic. It's an important topic because there are a whole host of people in our population now that have the diagnosis of autism, and some who even don't have the diagnosis yet, but who clinically are showing signs of having autism. A lot of people have grown into adulthood and, have concerns about their own behavior. They were the misunderstood kid or whatever the case may be, and don't realize it was autism, and they just never got a diagnosis. So a lot of times they never got the help or the guidance or the understanding to deal with themselves and their special characteristics. We all have special characteristics, and people with autism are particularly gifted in many ways. They have different ways of thinking, often magnificent ways of thinking, and many times are in the genius spectrum on the IQ level. Some of the more important inventors that we have no doubt been on the autism spectrum, as were people like Einstein. So let's talk about autism. To help head off this talk today, we have a very special guest, Hot Mike. Hot Mike, for those of you who do not know him, this is the producer for none other than MC Hammer. We also have joining us in the show, Kia Shine.
Hello.
Hey, 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 Kia.
How are you?
Doing fabulous.
I do apologize.
Fabulous.
I'm just getting off the plane. I had to get back we had a speak at the Shelby County government of the commissioners of Shelby County government today about autism. And we got back off the plane just now with my wife. So, and it was a little bit delayed getting from Memphis back to Atlanta. But how are you doing this evening? Everything all right?
Everything's all right. We're just thrilled to have you here joining us. And so since you were the first man up to speak, we are going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself. Kia Shine is an actor, music producer, rapper, correct?
Yes, ma'am. That is correct. And an autism advocate, as you can see here.
And an autism advocate.
You know what I'm saying? Indeed. I've actually, I started my career producing, starting with Yo Gotti. I signed him very early in his career. I put out albums on LaChat, Skinny Pimp, Gangsta Black, a lot of artists that are independent from Memphis that were doing everything. And then I kind of went and got my own deal and went to That's So Crispy and the hip hop vibe and the whole wave. Ended up writing Drake's Best I Ever Had and doing that thing. And And then from there, kind of did a beeline over to film and television after losing my mom and father to cancer. And yeah, and just been doing the film and television thing since then. I think my first thing nationally I was in was Atlanta with Donald Glover, and then I was in Superfly. That was a big thing for me. And then like I've been in like Star. I've been on with Brandy and Queen Latifah. I've been on Johnson. I've been a character on Red Dead Redemption 2. And more recently, I have a new movie on the way out with Jamie Foxx and Kiefer Sutherland and John Boyega. It's called, and I think Jamie just had a medical seizure today too. I'm trying to figure out what's going on with that. I just heard about that. Yeah.
Oh my.
So I'm going to be checking with Breon when I hang up this call. Because we got.
Make sure you get back to us and let us know about that, okay?
Yeah, because I just heard about that, and I'm going to make sure he's okay. But we have a movie called They Clone Tyrone that I'm in, and it's going to be on Netflix July 21st. It's going to be premiered at the Black Film Festival this year.
Okay,
so
perfect.
Yeah, so but nonetheless, right now this month I'm just heavy on the autism awareness and acceptance because April is World Autism Month, and I have a son, Jameson, who's in the other room in there. And he's my special genius boy with autism. He was diagnosed with severe autism, nonverbal, but he will be speaking. When he was 2, and he's now 12 now. And yeah, it's just been my whole advocacy. People look their whole life for their purpose in something that they could give to. Well, God put my purpose in my lap with my son, and being able to be an advocate and standing in solidarity with him, as well as parents like me, as well as other kids like him with different abilities. So that's been our mission, and we just been turning up the gas this month because we just released our new website, autismadvocates.org, which is a place to build community for those that have little babies and little kings with special abilities, you know what I'm saying, with different abilities. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
And that experience of becoming the parent of a child with special needs, it is such a humbling experience. I also had a child with special needs, and from it, I founded the Gregory Center for Exceptional Children and Families. And at the time that I founded it, I actually thought that it was going to be for children with developmental disabilities. And we were still in the process really of putting it together when the media found out that we were doing it. And so they asked to come out and interview us, a bunch of women sitting around with literally curlers in our hair and stuff, planning this out. And it's like, sure, when would you like to come? And they're like, well, we're on our way right now. So that launched the Gregory Center overnight. Literally, I had to turn off all of my phones because people were blowing up the phones. And what the interesting thing about it was the majority of the calls came from parents of children with autism, because there was such need for information, for support, for community.
Yes, I truly agree with that fact that there's been an underserved community with resources seem to be limited as it pertains to autism. And we just, my wife and I, over the last decade, with dealing with our son, we realized that, and we're like, well, look, we've got to step it up, and we've got to just start to build community and transfer this information and talk and just trying to figure this thing out. You know what I mean? It takes a village to raise any kid, but with a child with a different ability, it takes more than a village. It takes almost a city. So yeah, I mean, just being able to be that, because a lot of times when you have a child with a learning disability or different ability, it's gonna be an isolating thing.
Yes.
You can feel very isolating. So you want to, we need a safe space for individuals like ourselves to be able to come and talk, to be able to share ideas, feelings, and just, and communicate. So that's what we're super excited about, autismadvocates.org, and building a community and getting out here and just starting the conversation, spreading awareness, acceptance. It's like awareness, acceptance, and then inclusion.
Inclusion is the big part. And that was really a good chunk of the reason that we started the Gregory Center, because we wanted the inclusion. We wanted these children to be, part of their friends, part of their community, part of life. And at that time, children who had disabilities, whether it was autism or a developmental disability, were, they were pretty much squirreled away in the closet. They were dirty laundry or something that you had to hide. And we really wanted to bring them out and show that they are not disabled. They are differently abled, and they can contribute so much to the community. Now, hold that thought, because I want to tap in with Hot Mike, who has a completely different perspective on this. You and I are talking as parents of children with disabilities, or different abilities. And Hot Mike is coming from the angle of someone who has had to deal with it personally.
That's correct.
Hot
yes.
Mike, if you can tell us all about yourself and what your journey has looked like.
Well, for those who haven't done the Googles yet with me, I did my biggest project was with Capitol Records. I produced MC Hammer, wrote music for him, did composition. He had an entire stable of artists, and I've worked with all of them. So my primary introduction into the music industry was through him. And how that happened is we both met when we were in the military, when neither one of us knew anything about the music industry. And so why did this guy named MC Hammer turn up in the music industry? Well, partly because of this kid that came into the military. I finally had some money, because that was part of my plan. And I started buying musical equipment, because when I was much younger, my parents could not afford lots of musical equipment, because they would buy a piece of equipment, they would buy a musical instrument, I would learn how to play it, and then they would buy another one and I would learn how to play that. And so when I was much younger, like from 7 to 13, no one really knew what to make of me, even in my own family. Like they were like, why is he playing all of these instruments? We had no idea, we're not teaching him anything. So by the time I was in my teens, in the late 70s, early 80s, I was being dubbed, Prince, because that's when he started to come out and he was doing the whole instrument thing.
Right.
And I knew that if I went into the military, I could get it. I had a check and I could buy instruments. Well, I did that. And I bought all these instruments and I jammed them into our barracks room. And Hammer
Did you work with the military performing band?
I did not. I was just in the military just for a job, basically.
Okay.
And I brought all these instruments and boom boxes and all this stuff into the room, and that was MC Hammer. Now, he wasn't MC Hammer at the time. His name is Stanley Kirk Burrell. That's his real name. And so Stanley was like, oh my goodness, here's this guy this kid that plays all these instruments, and and he just asked me flat out. He said, "Hey man, can you make some songs that I can rap to?" And I was like, "Sure, yeah, whatever." And that's literally how it started. And at that moment, he said, "You know what? I'm buying all kinds of custom suits. I'm gonna be a rapper, and I'm gonna take you with me. I promise." And I was just like, yeah, whatever.
And he did. And he did. He was good for his word.
He got out of the military. He was much older than I was. So he was already going through the military. He got out. I was still in. And he did. He actually came back and said, hey, I think I got a record deal going, and I want you to come with me. And then the rest is history. So how did that whole thing start? Well, it started because when I was much younger, there was something very specifically different about my processes, the way I processed things, and the way I did things. And if you ask my mother, and I always tell this to people, if you want to know anything about the way an autistic child becomes an autistic adult, is you can just interview my parents.
Okay.
They're both still alive. They're both still here. My mom, I told my mom the other day, I said, a documentary company came to me, and I'm one of 6 people that they're filming in this documentary, autistic people. And I said, look, if you want to know anything about me, just interview them. Interview MC Hammer. They will literally tell you everything that you need to know because they all have had to deal with those quirks and those things that the routines, the things that they know them and they have no problem telling anybody. And I said, look, you can ask them. I can tell you all day, but just like that story I mentioned earlier about the person who I brought to dinner, I don't remember a lot. Because of what's called with most people who are on the spectrum, they have what's called mind blindness.
Right.
And mind blindness is just simply, I'll do a thing and I won't remember anything about the details of that thing. But if someone told me, I'd go, yeah, I'll remember something about that. But then that's about it. But a lot of things in my lifetime disappear. So as a person on the spectrum, and I'm diagnosed. I'm not just somebody that's like, hey, I think I'm autistic. I've been to universities. They've scanned my brain. I've gone through the whole concept, whole situation. Right. And one thing that I learned about being a person who is on the spectrum, if you do not have a specific gift that can propel you to being able to take care of yourself as you get older, you are in trouble.
Right.
You will be taken care of by your parents for the rest of your life. And not because you can't do anything, not because you can't work, or not because you don't have the ability to work. I know plenty of people who are on the spectrum and they have jobs and they do well, but those jobs are specialty jobs. Like I know a gentleman, his specialty is British European vehicles. That's his specialty. If he wasn't working on those cars, he would be broke. He'd be on the street, homeless. But he has a stable of Rolls Royces, Bentleys, Range Rover, you know what I'm saying? And he's doing very well because he knows how to fix those vehicles and he never got training for it.
And isn't it the case that usually there will be something at which people who are on the spectrum are singularly focused upon and they are brilliant at it?
That is correct. To this day, and I love talking about this because I have proof of all of this. When I was 16 years old and still in high school, I took a sheet of paper and I wrote on that sheet of paper exactly what I was going to do, which was to be a music producer. At the very top, I had music producer. And then at the all the rest of the way were all of the things that I was going to need to do to get there. I still have that piece of paper to this day. It's kind of yellow and looks like it's burning, but I still have that list. And so I've always been singularly focused on, I need to be a producer of music. I need to be a designer of music. I need to be a composer. I need to be all of these things. So one, I have to learn instruments. So this started very young, as I have to learn instruments. So that's why I started playing all these instruments, wind instruments, reed instruments, guitar, strings, everything, piano. I just focused on, if I learn how to play these, I'll be fine. Then when I went into grade school, then I learned how to read music. So I learned how to read music. So I was like, okay, this is what a major seventh is. So in my own process, I felt like if I did all of those things, I would be good at being a music producer.
Right.
To this day, I have people that come up to me and say, hey, man, I remember when you were in the studio at Fantasy Studios and, you did this, you did that. You just walked in the studio. You'd be in there for 30 hours. You wouldn't say anything to anyone. And you just left.
Yes.
Go in and do your job and you're gone. And that's literally what I did.
Let's talk about that. Now, that is something that is typical of people on the autism spectrum. The key thing that you said is you would go in and do your job and not talk to anybody. How much was communication an issue for you as you were coming through? So
communication was particularly frustrating for the people who I would do work with. And in part because of my hyper focus, not because I couldn't understand them or they couldn't understand me. The issue was sometimes people just want to do small talk. I don't. I'm not into small talk. So unless there's a specific topic of discussion, then I'm in on the discussion, sort of like, when we started out. I'm in on the discussion. Hey, that thing happened to me. Let me talk about that thing. But then I'm done after that. And that's particularly devastating in TV interviews. I'm sorry, in interviews on radio and things like that, because I can stop talking and then there's just dead air, and no one likes that. But I have over the years, I've learned to always have a thought process that keeps moving. And I saw someone do this and I actually appreciated it. I'm not a political person. I'm apolitical. I just, whatever. But former President Obama is very good at this. When he's talking, he doesn't want to break his thought process. So he pauses on purpose. And when he makes that pause, it causes you to go, what's he gonna say? You don't feel like something's wrong. You feel like something's coming. Right. And so I started
the lean in moment, the pregnant pause.
The pregnant pause. So I started to mimic. It's called echolalia. I started to echo what he was doing because it worked for me. It also keeps me from being a speaker that appears to not know what the topic of discussion is, or I don't have some kind of presence of mind for the subject, because it's difficult to keep a very specific way of speaking if you don't know what the topic is.
Right.
You get lost very easily. And I often got lost because sometimes what people were talking about was something I'd never experienced, because I don't live like people generally live. I'm not a person who goes out at clubs. I have sensory issues, so I can't go to loud places. Some of these places are very dark. And so that is also a sensory issue. I don't like walking around in dark spaces. Even places that are too bright, like department stores. You can ask my mom about that. I like to hide I always hid in the clothing things, those little things that they're round and the clothing racks. I used to hide in them all the time. So they would always lose me.
That's interesting, because you always see kids hiding in those clothing racks, but it never occurred to me that some of them might be using them as a tool to manage their environment as opposed to as a play place. That's an interesting thought.
And back in the day, if you lost a child, you just go to the front desk and you say, "Hey, I lost my child. Can you call them over the, and that happened many times. So over time, I understood that was going to happen. So every time we went to the department store, that's directly where I would go. And they wouldn't find me until they were ready to go, because then they would just call me over the and I'll just go to the front. I'm like, "Here I am." They're just like, "We're not taking you out anywhere again." And that was that. But that kind of way of communicating for me was difficult, because I really did not have anything to talk about, because my main focus was to produce music, was to be in the studio, was to, move faders, plug in.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit, because what we're talking about is something that now they've coined the term neurodivergent. And
Yes.
people who are neurodivergent have a different way of sensing things, experiencing things, and again, a different way of thinking. And people think of these as, quote, disabilities, but in actuality, they can be great gifts, as they have been with you, where, you know, this has promulgated you to a tremendous career. But you're in the entertainment industry where people communicate, and where one of the big parts of the entertainment industry is being able to read other people, to read the expressions, the nonverbal cues. How did you deal with that? Because most people on the spectrum have some difficulty with reading those nonverbal cues and with interpreting those nonverbal cues. Did you run into that trouble?
Yes. Short answer. The way I dealt with it, okay, let me put it this way. So there came a point in the span of my lifetime where I recognized that if I did not figure out how to read between the lines, so to speak, when dealing with people's expressions, dealing with sarcasm, dealing with certain types of things that I not just wasn't familiar with, but when I heard those things did not, those expressions or those images did not turn into something that made me feel like I had to respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to see how people were, no, I started to see how it was affecting my ability to work, especially in the entertainment field, because there's so much that's unspoken. There's so much that people say, well, we want your idea on this, or we want your opinion on this, or what kinds of, you know, things do you think we should do with this? And sometimes I was very brutal. And I'll give you an example. I was working at an independent label, Bellmark Records. Bellmark Records was run by Al Bell, who also ran Motown at one point. He started at Stax Records, turned it around, made it a big thing, Sam and Dave, the whole nine, we know that. So Al Bell, who I really, really dearly just love as a human being, because he kind of shows some of the same behaviors that I do in terms of communication. He's very blunt, straightforward. If anybody's met him, they know. He told me flatly, because someone called him and said, "Hey, Mike can produce one of your artists. You're one of your signed artists." And so he put me on the phone and he said, "Mr. Buckles, you have 40 seconds, 40 seconds to convince me that you can produce this group and give them hit music." I did it in 38 seconds.
Okay.
And he waited those remaining seconds before he said anything. And he basically said, "Hey, I'm convinced. Sounds like a plan. I'm flying you out." So when he flew me out, I did the music. Everybody loved it. He did the whole Motown thing. 8 out of 12 people, said, "Yeah, this is a hit song." And they proceeded to start processing the song through, the wheels of, production.
Right.
So I did the music, created it, composed it, matched it up to the band. There was guitar players, there was this player, whatever. And so when that all happened, he said, "Well, I have a team here that's going to do some remixes, and they're going to do this and they're going to do that." And I said, "Cool, that's fine." And he said, "I just need you here so that when the remixes come out, I want you to give me your honest opinion about what those remixes sound like." And
Uh-oh. I feel it coming.
and I did. Well, I told him, I said, hey, you know what? The sweet spot is 432 hertz and 85 dB, between 80 and 85. And I'm not hearing, the proper amount of bass. And this sounds a little tinny. And boy, the guy who did the remixes did not like that. So
I bet he didn't.
that ruined my relationship with the producer, not with Mr. Bell. Mr. Bell actually appreciated that. He actually really was impressed with my ability to hear what I was hearing. But that just came from years and years and years of being in studios and understanding equipment and understanding, sonic resonance and all these other different things that I had just been exposed to over time. And so when I mentioned those things in real time on a particular product or project, that was disturbing to some people who just like to go into the studio and turn stuff all the way up.
Yes.
Or back things down and then not equalize them and all of that.
Right.
So I understand how that works and how to make it work with equipment. And I just let him know, I'm like, look, this could be better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I did the music, so I know it can be better. And it wasn't the thing that killed the project, but it didn't help. Because then that guy then went to the artist and said, he don't like my stuff. And then he was just like, how come you don't like your stuff? And then I don't want him on the project no more. And I was basically ghosted off of the project.
Mm-hmm.
The group didn't come out and they were angry with me because they thought I made a boatload of money off of their project and it had never come out yet. And I was just like, no, So my inability to kind of read the room, so to speak,
mm-hmm.
became a source of frustration for me because I wanted to keep good relationships with people in that business because all it takes is one person to just go around and say, you don't want to deal with that.
The business is very small.
and it's not, and in no way is it easy to recover from that sort of thing. So I understood that was a problem, that was an issue that I had to fix because, as Kia was mentioning, there was nothing then. There was no community that was there to say, okay, this is how he's communicating, this is what's going on. And, there was no intermediary, and especially for somebody that looked like me.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about that. Because talk about invisible children. Black children on the autism spectrum are truly the invisible children and probably some of the least understood people on the planet. Let's talk about what that experience is as a Black man on the spectrum.
There's several things that come to mind because of just my own personal experiences. I'll just be blunt and it's all out there on the internet. So, but I was married twice and divorced twice. And in part, my marriages did not succeed primarily because, and I'm just speaking on my half of it because I can't speak for them.
Right.
But on my part, it was always difficult to communicate directly with me because I was always very linear in my communication. Right. I was very businesslike even in relationships with my wives, which is not kind of, it's just not cool. But I had no other way of knowing how to get my point across except direct.
Right.
And over time, and I'll explain how I learned this over time, I recognized that when you speak to a female person, that there's a whole different set of neurons and synapses and things going off that are going off in me. Now, the one thing that I recognized based on something my mother told me was that, and this is where I started to recognize this. So I had a child very early in the first relationship. And my second marriage, that ended because, again, not communicating right, very dogmatic, not, But as I was raising my daughter, because I eventually had a situation where my daughter was with me 100% of the time, full time. What I learned about women and dealing with girls and what they need from us as men is two things. I've said this to anybody who would listen. The two things that I realized that my daughter was absolutely in need of from me specifically as a man and as a father is one, relative safety and relative security. And the reason why I put relative in front of it is because nothing is completely safe and nothing is completely secure. But those are the two major things that if those things were covered by me, she's cool. Dad, I need to be sure that, this, and this. Okay, yes, no problem. I'm safe. Pops, I need shoes. Do we have, food, security, right? So she's cool. Once I understood that these are major motivating emotional responses that come from girls, women in particular. And even my mom mentioned this. She was like, yeah, she's like, that's why they target us, in marketing. We buy things in 3s and 5s.
Right. Absolutely.
So she said, this is something that is not new. It's not, so I started to learn that there is another whole, not just way of communicating, but a way of listening. And sometimes people aren't talking to you so that you can listen to them. They have body language. They have ways that they're, you can tell when somebody's having a bad day and they don't say anything.
Yes.
So those things I started to pick up as I was raising my daughter. This took an entire decade of me just not being in any other relationship, just dealing with my daughter. And my mother said something to me. She was just like, I have no idea how you're raising this daughter because you do not have one feminine bone in your body. and I think, and I feel like that statement comes from the fact that I'm very Spock-like in how I deal with things.
Yes.
And so she could not understand, well, how are you teaching her how to do her hair and how to, And I said, I just do the hair. I look it up in the manual, say, okay, you got to twist it this way, and boom, there you go. But you can't teach somebody how to do their hair that way. Right. And that was the whole point, which is why over time, eventually, a family friend was like, boy, just bring over my husband and my house and we gonna do your girl's hair. And I was just like, okay. So I understood that there were certain things that if I opened up a manual, I could do them because that's the way my brain works. I did that in the military, but that's not the way you run life. Right. And it took me until I was in my late 40s and right as I was turning 50, that's when it kind of clicked, and I was really starting to kind of key in on how to read people. And if I was going off on a topic or a subject, I would stop myself and go, time to listen. I literally had to do that. So the frustration cost marriages that I had. It cost some level of communication that could have gone better with my daughter. I always tell people I could have done that better, but I just, anytime you're tossed.
But you did it and you stayed the course. So
I stayed the course.
Applause. for you?
Well, and often I appreciate the applause. I'm humbled by any of that. But the bottom line is, you know, we all have circumstances and responsibilities that no matter how hard we try or whether we want to or not want to, in my case, I loved it, but we have to follow through. We have to do the thing because, like Hurricane said earlier, you know, time just it just keeps moving forward. It's not, you know, she was going to be like, you know, 6, 7, 8.
Right.
No, it's just that was just going to keep happening, whether I wanted
Now,
it to
was
happen
she
or
on
not.
the spectrum as well?
So we never got a chance to determine that.
Mhm.
And sadly now we won't have a chance because she's passed away. But and that's probably a story that I don't want to talk about at the moment because that's still very fresh. She passed away in 2016. So as an
My
adult,
condolences on that as one who has also lost a child.
thank you.
Not a club you want to be in.
It is definitely not a club, and just a bit of information that I learned about that. There's expressions for someone who loses a spouse, you know, widow or widower. There's expressions for someone who, you know, a child when they lose parents, an orphan. But there's no expression in any language. And I'm sure you know this. I'm sure you've been through it all. You've heard it out. There's no expression in any language for a parent that loses a child. None.
Because it's completely out of sync
When
with the normal routines of life, and we can't make it make sense.
When I learned that, it really hit me just how unnatural that is.
Exactly.
And so there's nothing that people can actually say, but the one thing that I always go back on is all of the good things that we did, the things that we shared together, the things that she learned about me, the frustrations we both had, you know, turned into laughs later, you know, in her 20s.
Yeah.
So it was eye-opening. I learned a lot about how I had to teach myself how to be as great a communicator as I possibly could. You know, I read a lot of books. You know, books like this one. If it shows up right,
Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah, Think and Grow Rich. Stuff like that. I actually put things in my head on purpose to say, okay, maybe there's another way to do things so that I can get different kinds of results for myself. And so that's what I did. I actually started feeding myself information. Since I don't watch TV, I don't own a television set. And you know, my grandmother back when I was a toddler told me that the television was the devil's eyeball. So she told me that, and I was like, okay, I am never.
and you're very concrete and literal about that. I mean, one of the things with the autism spectrum is if you say something, you better be real clear about what you're saying because they will take it and run with it as gospel.
Once she told me that, I was like, okay, I will never own a television ever. And so I don't to this day. Wow, what is that? Like 50 years now. But again, I always use the word frustration versus, you know, something that's a word that describes something that's more tragic, because frustration for me is everything. Frustration for somebody who's on the spectrum is everything.
Right.
Because you can become frustrated by the smallest things.
Right.
If something doesn't smell right, it'll ruin everything about your sensory circumstances. And it'll stop you from doing everything. I can't stand the smell of cigarette smoke. So if I'm going somewhere and someone's just standing in front of the building smoking where they're supposed to, that doesn't matter that they're doing the right thing. My sensory circumstances are like, okay, I'm going home. I'm
done.
I'm smelling smoke in the whole. Okay, you know, and that's real because you don't want those kinds of things to control the way you deal with people because it comes out in communication.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like those frustrations are always verbalized because you want people to understand that you're hurt in some kind of way. And that is something that I did from the time that I was very small to now even. And again, I still have to catch myself. I still have to go, that's no one's gonna be okay with that, bruh. You're gonna have to change. And as a black man, as a indigenous, whatever you want to call me, the expectation is, he's either athletic, he's funny, he's entertained, he's
gotta be cool.
He's gotta be cool. There's something about that, because he's, and I'm none of those things. I'm nerd central, But what I had to learn was that you cannot diffuse, detach, cancel other people's expectations. But I did learn this, and this is actually biblical, by the way. It's another book that I really enjoy, and that is dropping all of your expectations. And I have literally had teachers tell me, how dare you? You shouldn't tell children to just drop all their expectations. We have expectations for children. I'm like, and that's part of the problem. That's why it's hard to teach kids, because you're giving them a bar. Now, it's important to help children to reach for something, but that comes from inspiration.
Right.
And we can't give a person inspiration. I mentioned this to my mother the other day. I said, I don't want to be inspirational. And that sounds weird to some people, because in the world that we live in, you have all of these influencers on social media and all of this. And this has to do with communicating with people. Mm-hmm. And my goal is not to be an inspirer of people. I would never go out and say, I'm trying to inspire young people. Inspiration is only something that a human being can draw from another human being. Mm-hmm. You can't bottle that up and go, hi, I have this special inspiration here for you, and I'm going to give it to you. That is not how it works. How it works is I do something aspirational. And they go, man, this guy's multi-platinum record producer. He's worked on albums that's gone 5 times diamond. Historical, iconic, work that he's done. He works in television. He's an actor. He does this. He's done all this stuff. He's still in the entertainment business. He's, and that's inspirational. See? Now that comes from directly comes from someone who sees that, like the gentleman that I was telling you about who wrote me that long thing. Right. He found inspiration in the way I behaved. And that's how, and so you can't bottle it up and say, I'm going to give it to this person, this person, this person. Each individual person has to find something inspirational in someone else. Mm-hmm. And that you don't know where that's going to come from.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, somebody could be an animal
the places trainer. You least expect.
Yes. So my goal is to communicate who I am. My goal is to clearly state, this is who I am. This is how I do the things I do. This is how I get through the day. This is how I move about. And it has allowed me to remain honest and self-aware, so that when I get into a circumstance, I can come out of it successfully. I can come out of it with something that I learn new about myself.
Now, let's talk about your success as an actor, because that has to have been incredibly difficult for you. I know that when I was acting, the minute that agents would hear that I was a doctor, there would be these walls that would go up, and they would say, well, you can't possibly be an actor because, you're scientific and you can't possibly emote and feel. Right. And here you are in a very concrete world that doesn't necessarily understand the innuendos and the finessing of feelings and subtle communications. how did you find success in the world of acting?
So I was going to see if I had the book available to show you, but there's an actress who wrote a book about acting, and I'll find it and mention it to you at some point. But
Okay.
what that book did was tremendous for my acting career. Okay, so the book basically defines acting as this. The biggest example she used was the biggest person as an example she used was the actor who did the Rocky movies, Sylvester Stallone.
Sylvester Stallone.
Okay, so when we watch those movies, I almost don't even have to say anything. When we watch those movies, we get the same feeling every time we see the movie. No matter how old it gets, we already know what the ending's going to be.
Right.
But why is it that we already know what the ending's going to be? Is it because the way the script was written, possibly? Is it the kind of semi-cornyish way that it keeps running up to, okay, this guy is eventually going to win, and yay, and everybody's going to applaud him? But there's something about that, about the ability to draw emotions out of people that don't belong there for the person on the screen.
Right.
The method that she talks about using is to to try to bring emotion out of people, but to try to bring empathy out of people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my job to go on screen and show emotion. That's not my job.
Mm-hmm.
According to this actor, coach.
Mm-hmm.
Your goal is to pull empathy out of people. So however best you do that, it might not necessarily be because you emoted on screen.
Right.
It could be the progression of the story and how, and maybe they saw you down, or they saw you in a circumstance, and so it's how you best show your true self in that circumstance. So okay, so we get it. Acting like that is very exhausting. The Creed actor, Michael B. Jordan, he's said that on several occasions. That style of acting will drain you.
Yes.
Because you're not trying to emote. You're trying to draw empathy.
Right.
And that is exhausting, but it's rewarding. Because when you do it, you have made a movie that's going to make you money for the rest of your life.
Right.
And we all know that Creed series of movies is going to make that man a billionaire. We already know this. Now, this is the way I act. Even as a background actor, when I started, that's what I did. Anytime there was a prop that was around me, I would use the prop.
Mm-hmm.
Because the director would come in and he goes, "Hey, you know what? I know you guys are in the background. Relax. Do normal stuff." Da, 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 da. And they go through the whole list of things that you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And I'd be sitting in there amongst all these other actors who've gone to schools. They've done this, they've done that. Some haven't done anything, but they're all like, I'm an actor. I'm going to be, out there one day. I'm going to audition. And I'm sitting there. I'm going, I wonder how many of these people are going to use their props. Mm-hmm. 9 times out of 10, and I'm sure you've seen this.
Yes.
They don't touch any of those props. They just sit there like bumps on a log, and they're like, "Am I going to get on camera? Is this the right, angle?" And all I do is I sit there and I figure out how I'm going to use the prop. Mm-hmm. And every time I do that, I get featured.
That's right.
And the reason why is because I don't just have a bottle of water sitting in front of me that the directors or the set prop people put there. I take the cap off. I'm sitting there while the actor's doing his thing, and I'm like, Okay, yeah, this is a great meeting. All right, whatever. I'll take a pen and I'll just be like, okay, all right, well, I don't want to be here, whatever. And so I'm doing all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what that does? It draws empathy.
It engages.
It engages people. And so people are like, and I'll never forget it. The first time I did something like that, people focused on me. They were like, man, he looks like he's bored at that meeting. He looks like he doesn't even care about what they're talking about. So even though the main actors are doing what they're doing, people are focused on me and going, did he just drink some of that water? And that's what you want to do as an actor. And guess what that doesn't take from me? It doesn't take me having to be emotional.
Right.
Which is something that I'm not good at anyway. I'm either smiling all the time or whatever, so my whole thing is when I'm acting, I just use what's there, try to pull empathy from people. And when I do that, that's what works. And I don't know when this independent movie's coming out, and I'm really bad about keeping track of these things, but I literally had a director walk up to me and he goes, I need for you to cry.
Whoa.
He said, there's a dead person right here. It's a dead kid. We just found him. And you know what? You know the family, the wife and the husband, and you just found the kid. You're close with their family and you got to cry. And he just looked at me. He said, can you cry? I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? And no one on set believed me. The primary actors, nothing. They were just like, you just going to cry just on the spot like that? And so guess what? I had the one memory that we just recently talked about. I had that one memory. Mm-hmm. The biggest hurt that you could possibly have in your life. And I just instantly called it up. And when I called it up, I was bawling like a baby. Mm-hmm. And the director hugged me after the scene. He told me, get this man a trailer. This guy, this man is amazing. All this kind of stuff. And he even remembered me, the next time, for, some more work. So that's how I'm able to do the job is I look at it as a job. My job is to draw empathy from the audience, is to get the audience involved, no matter how small a role I'm playing. And, eventually, hopefully, I get a much larger role, some better auditions. I'm horrible at auditions.
I'm horrible at auditions too. I can't hate auditions.
And especially now, because
I just can't connect.
They always ask you to do this on Zoom now, and they're just like, you should do a virtual audition. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm acting in front of, a bottle of water. Hey.
Yeah, so. Right. Exactly. I can't make the connection.
Yeah. So, but anytime I'm on set, I click into certain types of things that I teach myself.
Right.
That fit my personality or fit my ability to process things. And that's what I call it. It's a process because I don't know what else to call it.
Well, life's a process and just existing is a process. And whether you have autism or on the spectrum, and I mean, my personal belief is that every single person on the planet is on the spectrum somewhere. So it's just a matter of recognizing where on the spectrum you're landing, but it's all a process. It's just a process. And it's a dynamic process.
Yes.
I tend to agree with that last comment you said, that we all fall into some level of spectrum because we all have personalities, characters, and different ways of behavior. Mm-hmm. And whatever it is, I mean, autism is still a discoverable, progress work, whatever you call it. It's not as clear as people may think. I'm listening to a lot of stuff.
I love people who are on the spectrum. I love the shoot from the hip thing. I love the honesty and the simplicity of it. And I think that if everybody was like that, we'd have a much less complicated world.
It's a straight shot.
Well, Hurricane, you brought up the point of, and you did as well, Dr. Cheryl, is that the spectrum itself, right? The word, it's just the meaning,
Yeah.
it is a spectrum.
Exactly.
And someone who really focused on that, who's also in the autism community, is Dr. Temple Grandin.
Temple Grandin, I love her. I love her.
And me and Dr. Temple Grandin have spoken on different occasions, but in one particular occasion that we spoke, I think I was in Canada doing a book signing or something, and we talked on the phone, and her pet peeve, if you will, is when certain parents were coming to her because she was very popular. She's had movies made of her, the whole night.
Yes.
And her big issue was, I'm kind of putting her on blast, and I don't want to do that, but I love her so much. But she said there would be parents that would come up to her and go, my child made this drawing. My autistic child had this drawing, and she's just like, okay, that's great. So what are you teaching your child? Well, I'm just going to let my child draw and, just let her do her thing. And she was like, no, what are you actually teaching her to do? Like she's not going to be able to just draw her way, through college or,
right.
whatever, and if you've ever met Dr. Temple Grandin, her life, her mom did not play.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
And Temple doesn't either.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Her mom was just like, nah, you ain't biting nobody today. You gonna cut that out.
Yep.
That's not cool.
Yes.
Trying to be, So her whole thing is, yes, be kind to your children, but even if they have autism or some other, delay of being able to do something or an ability, don't coddle them.
Yes.
Actually challenge them to the degree that they can be challenged,
mm-hmm.
and let them shine.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just, allow them to just, hey, you know what, this is as far as I'm going to go and I'm good with this, because
mm-hmm.
you never know what that child is capable of if you
right.
do not give them something extra to challenge them with, to give a little push. And my mother really identified with Temple Grandin's mother.
Mm-hmm.
She read Temple Grandin's mother's book and just went crazy. She was like, this is me. This is me all day. And she did that with us.
Mm-hmm.
She always challenged us. And my
mm-hmm.
father was big at that too. Well, I think we can talk about him too, because I think that he's on the spectrum and he's
mm-hmm.
just never been identified, because in my mind, he's the genius that
right.
that I want to be like at some point. But yeah, the spectrum is wide, and just like Kia said, his son is nonverbal,
mm-hmm.
but that doesn't negate brilliance.
Mm-hmm.
I see all children as brilliant, regardless of their circumstance and where they are.
Mm-hmm.
If we think that first, then they're capable of anything at that point, because you're thinking that this is who they are. So you're going to
mm-hmm.
give them that energy. And just because his son is on that end of the spectrum, it doesn't matter. You can still communicate with somebody that's nonverbal.
Yes.
I know a lot of nonverbal people.
Sometimes they communicate things that are very profound.
Oh, listen, I know a lot of people that are nonverbal on the spectrum. I actually had a debate with one because she didn't like something that I said. And so she got on her keyboard. She was like, I got something to say to you. So we have, and again, I love that. I enjoy that, because what that should do is it should give other people who are not regularly involved with people who are on these different ends of the spectrum a chance to see that we're just regular people having conversations.
Right.
This is not brain surgery. This is not rocket science. We we just want to have community. We just want to be able to talk to people, and wherever we land on the spectrum, I don't know how many times I've heard people say, "Man, you're just a genius. You pick up stuff like that. No one has to train you to teach you to do nothing. You just look at it a couple of times. I don't know how you do that with that piece of equipment. It's not designed for that." I've heard that so many different times. But in my mind, I don't see limitation. I don't see. Exactly. I can pull something apart in 3D just looking at it.
Exactly.
But that's the way my mind works, and as frustrating as it is sometimes to live that way, because I tear everything apart. I used to do that when I was a kid, and I still do it. But I explode everything, and then I wind up having to fix it and put it back together. But my goal is to make it better.
Okay.
So that's literally how I do everything. That's how I create music. That's how I produce other people's music. That's how I do marketing. That's how I do all the acting. I explode it. I look at it, and then I put it back together. And I go, this is how I need to do this, and I can do that in a split second. Now, I don't know. Mom says it's a gift, and I had to actually agree with that because I don't know where that often comes from. And I have to admit to myself that sometimes we all have different gifts, and we all have different things that we do that's impressive to another person, but that's okay. I was a top 40 DJ, radio DJ. But the only reason why I was a top 40 radio DJ is because I echoed a voice that I had heard when I was a kid. And the voice that I gravitated when I was a kid was Frankie Crocker. Frankie Crocker was a radio DJ up north, and I listened to him all the time. Frankie Crocker. And he'd just come on the radio. "Oh, this is Frankie Crocker." And he'd do this thing. So I just mimicked his voice when I was hired as a radio DJ because I'd never been a radio DJ before. And so I mimicked his voice for the entire interview, and the guy was like, "You're hired." So I've been able to work and to do things because I can take stuff apart, put it back together in my own way, and then do that thing. So I've been very fortunate in that because I do know the struggles that people on the spectrum have because of their inability to communicate. And in my circumstances, I've always communicated by echoing other people, and that impressed other people enough to hire me, to pay me to do something. And that's why I make it. Not everybody can do that, I suppose.
Mike, you mentioned something about their inability to communicate, or the inability to communicate. I think it's just the inability to communicate as expected from, others.
Expectation.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest problem, is that we always expect certain way from certain people. It doesn't matter whether you're spectrum or not. There's expectation of how you're supposed to. What is the normal? How we do things. You're just doing it your way. And unfortunately, we might, when we say we might, not understand everybody's way because we don't know how they do it. And so you have to adapt to that. And, I think, Doctor, you said it the best. Differently enabled or abled, rather, right? So that's what it is. It's a different way. I mean, you said you explode things, you break things down, and you put them back together. That's how you do. You talked about the acting, and the way you were describing it is the same way when you said, "I'm going to be a producer and I'm going to put a list of things." You use that prop, to operate with it. So that's your thing. You set a goal, you work towards it. That's the way you do it. And you adapt to the situation as needed. You don't think too much. I think that's the problem we all do. We keep thinking, overthinking, boom, boom, boom.
It's stuck in our heads.
Yeah. And we get all of it lost. And it's like, what is the task? I mean, when you go to work, spectrum or no spectrum, you go to work, there's an expectation. People want you to do 1, 2, 3. Right. And then you're like all over the map. So you just cut in that whole short thing, and you're doing it correctly, the way it is, the way you know it. You said something about the kids, when you were a child, how it was. it is not easy, for like especially when you talked about the doctor's example and how parents come in. It's like, I want my kid, and stop cuddling them. I think people cuddle people today, regardless. Everybody's being cuddled too much, as opposed to like, hey, we got to challenge people. And people don't understand what's going on, and you have to, like, the challenge is what drives the diagnosis or the case. Like I can't tell what you want if I don't push, right? And so I want to push more, I want to challenge more, and you're going to give more. That's how it works. I mean, you've touched on so many things, but one thing that you said, all across, is that it's all organized.
Yes.
Everything to you is organized. Like 1, 2, 3, step 1, 2, 3, 4.
I could use a little bit more of that organization.
Exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, I think if we all kind of just focus on what we need to do and do it correctly and focus on things, we will have much better outcomes. I'm sorry, but that's reality. Yes. We're too all over the map, and it serves you well. And we talked about spectrum, different levels, but at the end of the day, like I don't share this a lot, but my brother-in-law is actually autist. I mean, full spectrum, and he's got. But one thing, again, same rule. He is solid about his things. His times are his times. If he needs to do something, his clock works. He's going to do it exactly how it is. Nothing changes his mind on whatever he's planned to do, and he'll do it exactly the way it is. Can't tell him, you can't change things. No. And once he is set on it, that's it. His trust is limited to certain people. If he has one way of thinking about it, and that's it.
Yeah.
So it's a lifestyle, and there's nothing wrong with it. To be honest with you, I don't see it that way. I see it actually as it just him. That's the other thing. People are who they are, and we have to accept that fact. That you are who you are. And yes, and by the way, there is no such thing as normal, at least in my book.
No.
Everybody's crazy, and you just have to pick which flavor you like. It's like ice cream,
That's right. I mean, listen, we could go on, and I mean, I have been quiet. I'm listening, but I mean, you've put in so much stuff, into the show and the audience.
Yeah, I do that. I tend to do that.
It's been fantastic.
It is awesome, fantastic. Man. I've learned a lot, and I had one question though. I mean, by the way, before I do the question, one thing you said is when you were in the military. Military requires organization, discipline.
Oh, I've got a story for you.
I'm sure you do. But I was going to ask, like, how hard was it, or how easy was it for you to work with the system? I think in a way, if you did exactly what you did, then everything is organized and you follow, boom, 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 step, you're going to be just cool about it, and you're going to move on through it. Probably did. I don't know. I mean, you obviously did somehow.
So actually, this is perfect, because it's a perfect segue into how the military worked for me. So my father and my mother were both in the Air Force, and my father was an Air Force sergeant. And what he made me and my brothers do, and this is actually a family thing. We laugh about this now, but he used to make us. We made the bed. Made them with hospital corners.
Yes.
And that part that you sleep under had to have the fold.
Yes.
Perfect. And it had to, you couldn't slip it under that. It was so tight. So
did you bounce the quarter?
You can bounce the quarter off of that. So
military brat.
Yeah. So me and my brothers made our beds like that all the time. And it got to the point where that's what we had to do every time we got out of the bed. We had to make it like that. To the point where when I was going to sleep, I would try to slip up under that and just like, I don't want to make this anymore. So that's where I came from. So in my mind, discipline was not necessary, because I had already come from a circumstance where everything was regimented and disciplined. Now, so I get into the military because my parents were like, "Yeah, you'll be fine." So, not knowing that I'm on the spectrum, so I get into the military and I'm in boot camp. Okay, so this is what I should have been told about boot camp. Boot camp is designed for people who do not have discipline. That's the whole point of boot camp, is to get you ready for the discipline you're going to be in. So if I could have skipped over boot camp, it would have been great. Instead, I had to go through it. And this is what happened, because I'm already regimented and I already have things lined up and organized and ready to go. The young men and even older men, middle-aged men that I met who were going through boot camp, I did not like any of them. Not only did I not like them, I didn't get along with any of them. And part of the reason was I literally thought that they were stupid. This gonna be I'm putting it all out there. It's gonna be online, just might as well just put it out there. I literally thought that they were stupid. Now, I thought that they were stupid because they didn't know how to follow direct. A lot of them did not know their left foot from their right foot.
Right.
They didn't know that if the company commander said, "Don't look at me, look past me," they were still looking at him and they were crying. And I was just like, what's wrong with these people? Like, seriously? It's easy for me to look past someone. It's, don't look at my eyes. Hey, no problem. I don't want to look at you anyway. So for me, it was the easiest thing to do. When they gave me an instruction, I just did it. Mm-hmm. So now I'm in this company of people who I don't like because none of them know how to follow any instructions. And here's the thing about boot camp. When one person gets something wrong,
everybody pays the price.
Everybody gets punished. See, I didn't even have to finish that. Everybody gets punished. So I was like, why am I here? I'm always getting punished for what these idiots are not doing. So I got so frustrated. There's that word again. I got so frustrated that I went to the company commanders. I walked into the office by myself. They're both sitting in there. I walked into their office and I said, put me in another boot camp company. Let me start off with a whole nother group of people. I don't want to be here anymore. No one here knows how to follow directions. No one knows, why am I being punished for their stupidity? I'm out. I can follow instructions. They're not, we got guys wanting to jump out of windows and they're Mr. Mamas, and I'm done.
They looked at you like,
and they looked at me like, how are we going to deal with this one? So they did something I thought was absolutely brilliant. And I actually took a lesson from this to this day. So I complained that they're not doing this. They're not left, right. They don't know what they're doing. And so they looked at each other and one looked at me and he goes, and he opens up his drawer. He's got this desk that he's sitting at. And he opens the drawer of the desk and he takes out these two, what looks like rankings, that you pin on.
Right.
He puts them on the desk and he goes, "That's your new rank." And I go, "What?" He goes, "That's your new rank. You're gonna put those on your outfit, and that's get squared away. But that's your new rank because we're gonna put 5 people under you,
right? And
you're going to train them to do exactly what you know that they're supposed to do."
Team leader.
And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I took the rank, put them on, got squared away, walked out of the office, and the guys were like, "Yo, man, you got rank. Yo, what you did? Yeah." And I was just like, "I'm picking you, and you, and you, and you. And we're going to be our own team, and we're going to do our thing. We're going to get ourselves squared away, and we're going to do our thing." So I trained those guys. We got a little thing. Every time we go around the base, we're like a little, 6 of us, just hand the left, and then we were perfect. Everybody was like, "Yeah, fuck, man, we got it going on." So, still getting punished because them other idiots is getting us in trouble. So I go to the company commanders again. Same complaint. I'm like, you know what? Who's going to deal with these other characters? We're squared away. Why are we getting punished? He didn't even look at his partner this time. He just opened his drawer.
Another rank.
Took out some more ranks. He's like, "That's your extra rank." I was just like, "Okay, now what?" He goes, "Now you're going to have 12 people under you."
Oh, he's giving you the whole crew.
So I'm like, okay. So I get 12 people now. So it's just, head, left, and we're all tight, right? Now that's literally like maybe, I don't know, like a third of the group, because there's a bunch of us.
Yeah.
And so a lot of them are seeing us and we're getting, extra rank and we're doing our thing. And then people are like, well, maybe we ought to really get with it and concentrate and do what Mike over there is doing, step up our game. So they started to step up their game. And when some of them would mess up and that would cause us to, still get punished, I was like, you know what? Let me go to the person that's actually causing the problem and see if I can help him. So I'll never forget this one guy. He didn't know how to actually shine his boots, because they don't give you polish to shine your boots. You have to figure out how to buff out the leather on your boot to make it shine automatically, to make it shine on its own. They don't give you patent leather boots. You have to shine them up. So I actually, because his boots were crazy looking, and he was like, I don't know how to do it. Nobody wanted to help him. So guess what? I wasn't getting punished.
We're doing this.
So I walked over, dude. I said, hey, man, if you hang with us for at least a couple of days, I'll get those boots shined up, and you'll have a whole technique of how to do that on your own. Oh, Buck, man, I appreciate that. My name is Buck because my last name Buckles. Man, Buck, I appreciate that, man. Helped him shine up his boots, got him squared away. Nobody got punished anymore. Weren't any more fights in there anymore. Everybody was cool because nobody was frustrated that they were going to get punished again. And that's when I knew there was something about how I was disciplined that made a difference in other people wanting to be disciplined.
Yes.
And you cannot teach that.
Yes.
In some ways, that's something that comes with how you're brought up, a little bit of DNA, a little bit of who you are, but you can always improve on it. You can always turn it into something positive. For a good chunk of the time I was in boot camp, it wasn't positive. I just thought I was the man. And that wasn't the case. I wasn't just the man. I was the guy who already knew what it was that they were trying to teach.
Right.
So they were trying to help me to be someone who could teach. And that's why when I finally got when I finally made the place I was going to be at in the military, my duty station. Yeah, that's what I was searching for in my brain. When I finally got a duty station, I was in a squadron. I was in an air reconnaissance squadron. It was like, people were like, how did you get an air reconnaissance squadron? Like, we're all going to like submarines and crazy stuff we don't want to be in the Navy. And I said, well, I have no idea. But they send top people to squadrons because you're dealing with airplanes and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I got to the squadron, and literally like a month into being at the squadron, the company commander came to me and he said, we think you'd be a good officer. Oh, what? So then they wanted to train me to become an officer from the ranks of, enlisted.
Mm-hmm.
So they were teaching me all kinds of stuff. It's actually how I learned about cryptology.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were teaching me how to do all of this coding and all this other stuff that nobody was doing in the 80s. How to create documents on computers. Remember the black screen and the green letters?
Oh, yeah.
And the Matrix.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I remember computers being the size of a wall, and you had little key punches.
The little dash dots.
That's how I would create entire programs and create forms for the enlisted people to fill out so that they could, get paid, so they could update their status, everything. I was doing that from scratch. And they were like, man, this guy, we just give him a book and he just learns everything.
Mm-hmm.
And the cryptology thing, of course, lasted down to this day because I have four certifications in crypto,
Mm-hmm.
Cryptocurrency law enforcement, all kinds of work that I do in crypto now. I even advise crypto projects. I'm advising one now that's looking at trying to get about 3 to 5 million invested in it, because a lot of people are afraid of this process in crypto. But the one thing I learned is that the government has no problem with crypto.
Right.
All my certifications come from Homeland Security. So I already know what the government wants to do with crypto. So I advise crypto projects to not be afraid of being registered projects. You know what I mean?
Right.
To go to the SEC, do all the right paperwork, do everything you're supposed to do. Everybody's trying to, go against the government. And I'm like, don't do that. Just be someone who has a solution for the government and you'll be fine. But these are some of the things that I've learned how to do over time because of that hyper focus that I'm grateful to have, and my father has it too, because he's a master electrician and he's almost 90 years old. You don't stay a master electrician just because you say you are. There's a test you have to take every year to keep that going. So he still has the wherewithal to take those exams and still come out on top and be a master electrician. That's amazing to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, as people are looking at the neurodivergent community to bring them into community and into workplaces, what advice would you give? Twofold. One, what advice would you give the person on the spectrum? And two, what advice would you give the people looking to bring this neurodiversity into their community?
I'll say this. As a person on the spectrum, have as much as you can, have an open mind about who wants to help you, right? Try not to be so too dogmatic about
judgmental.
What it is that judgmental is part of it, but try not to have any assumptions about how someone is doing something to assist or to help or to make you, bring some sort of relief to that community. That's the one thing. I've witnessed this with a lot of people on the spectrum who I am friends with, who I'm, know casually. There is a running suspicion of people who are not on the spectrum and what their intentions are.
Right.
That I'm telling you, I know that.
Right.
I know that for a fact.
Right.
And that did not happen by accident or some form of imagination. There have been things that have been going on in the autism community that's not part of the autism community.
Right.
I dubbed it about a decade ago. I dubbed it the autism cottage industrial complex.
Right.
Because that's basically what it turned into. People were looking for ways to make money off of something that they could turn into a pity party.
Right.
For their 501c3.
Right.
And I was adamantly opposed to that. And I became involved with a lot of organizations and groups that were opposed to that. So that
I think that crosses over into all of the realms of people with different abilities, because I mean, especially in the deaf community, I really see that as well.
Yeah. So that can stymie any kind of growth and any kind of real cohesive type of community growth in this space. But I caution, my brothers and sisters who are like me, and to give people an opportunity to prove themselves, to give these spaces an opportunity to prove where they're at and what it is that they wish to help us to do. In terms of other people, the best thing I could tell another person is to really, really sympathize and empathize with people on the spectrum who've been through the ringer. A lot of us have been through trash. We've been through a lot of stuff, and there's no way for us to recount how much garbage we've been through in dealing with, the autism cottage industrial complex.
Right.
Groups that try to take advantage of people on the no, not just people on the spectrum, but their parents, their guardians, people who are taking care of them.
Yes.
And what has happened in certain circumstances is that sometimes those parents get to a point where they're like, well, my child, even though they're on the spectrum, they don't believe in what I'm doing for them. And so it creates even a even more toxic environment where now you have autistic adults, saying, I don't talk to my parents anymore.
Right.
They're involved in that cult autism, group or whatever.
Right.
So just for those people who actually want to help, those people who want to be involved and to be helpful to people who are on the spectrum, just be kind. Just have deep empathy and sympathy for anything that can trigger us, because so much has been happening that has triggered us. And there are a lot of people who are like me that talk the way I was telling you I was in the military, right? They'll come into a space and they'll be like, oh, you guys are an autism, organization? Yeah, you're probably all idiots. But they're not being mean. It's just that they have been experiencing the behavior of certain people, and now that's locked in, and then they have to get locked out. They have to
have consequences. It
absolutely does.
Major consequences, because I had a patient that was clearly on the spectrum and absolutely brilliant, and came in with the "you guys are idiots and I can fix this" attitude, was rejected, and it ended up in, I had to 5150 this gentleman because he was fully suicidal, and I didn't dare let him walk out of the building. And he appreciated, it wasn't completely against his will. I explained to him what I was seeing and where he was at, and he appreciated that I gave him that opportunity to not take his life. But it had that much of an impact on him, the rejection that he got, because he was just looking at these people as idiots that needed to be fixed.
And that's the danger. That particular experience right there is the danger, because now you've got someone that has no hope. When you take hope away from a human being, it's not like, oh, they're hearing negative stuff all the time and then, oh, I'm just hopeless. No, the core of who that human being is, you're denying it in some way, shape, or form.
Yes.
And even though someone like myself, who and folks know this about me, I don't hug anybody. I'm not a hugger.
You lose Mike?
I think we froze. Well, we've lost communication with Mike, and this has clearly been a very deep and certainly interesting conversation. And Kia had to bounce out, and I totally understand where Kia is, because he has a 12-year-old, and he's just come in off of a trip, and the 12-year-old is in the other room. The 12-year-old is on the spectrum, very involved. He has his hands so full at this particular moment in time because there's been disruption in the environment of this 12-year-old. So, frequently they'll have meltdowns, and there has to be a reorganization for the child. So we appreciate that he was able to come on and join us even for a short while, and we will make a point of bringing Kia back, and we'll address this maybe even next week, from the perspective of a parent raising a child on the spectrum, because it is a very different perspective. And for every Mike out there that is successful, as he indicated, there was a successful parent who understood what it was going to take to bring him to a point where he could be self-sustaining, where he could be a productive part of society, and where he could be in community. That didn't happen without the tremendous efforts of the parents. So I look forward to bringing Mike back on to talk to us about some of what it takes to be the parent of a child on the spectrum. This is Autism Spectrum or Autism Awareness Month. And so we certainly will be talking more about it. We thank you for joining us for this very important show. And we hope that you take some of what you heard out and really process it, think about it, and think about how you yourself fit into the community with people who are on the spectrum, whether you are someone who is on the spectrum, which again, I say we're all on the spectrum somewhere, or whether you're someone who is bringing another person on the spectrum into your community and hoping to support them well. So with that being said, any last minute words you want to throw out there, Hurricane?
No, I mean, it's been rich as a conversation. I mean, me putting any words would not add up to the source, and Mike, was very rich in what he gave us. And actually, I had a show with a person who was actually a podcaster and who had suffered with the autism, and great personality, great show host. And I mean, he was a guest on my side, but I also promote his stuff, and it's just awesome to see the success level and that the ability, as you said.
Yeah.
I love what you said, differently abled, and I think that should be a new way of describing people who are dealing with things differently from what we expect them to be, and again, quote unquote, because we all have these things that we think that we are perfect or we are one way or the other. Yeah. No one is perfect, and we all have our own limitations. We all have our own perfectly, working things, and maybe not perfectly working things.
We're all perfectly imperfect.
Yes. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's life. Yeah. And, but so I, this was awesome. And yes, it is an important topic. I have yet to, I've been trying to find actually an expert in autism to actually like a doctor or someone who actually specializes in the autism spectrum and defining it to a degree. And we will get to that. But definitely something that we need to also emphasize on and make the effort to promote and share and educate, because there is a lack of understanding of it. Yes. And especially when you have someone that is around you. And I think almost everybody has met or experience or has someone in their realm that may have some sort of level of spectrum of autism, whether we know it or not. I mean, talking to Mike, I mean, he went to the military not knowing that he had, this. He diagnosed beyond that. So how many of us may not have diagnosed, or at least known, what we have until today? And,
interestingly enough, a lot of people, the military flushes out autism in a lot of people. They never knew that they had it until they hit the military.
And listen, I'm listening to it like, when you're like, military, you're solid, you want things to a certain way. I mean, we talk about OCD, we talk about stuff. Who knows? I mean, there's more to it. That's what we want the expertise, to share with us, like all these things and intricate things. And hopefully we can clarify for people what it means. It is part of life, and we have to understand it. We need to cope with it. I mean, again, you might encounter someone, even if, let's say, you don't have anyone immediately, but maybe at work, maybe in a street, maybe somewhere, on a trip. You never know.
You will encounter someone.
Yes, I mean,
you encounter people who are on the spectrum every single day of your life, and most of the time you don't even realize it.
No, that is correct. And so we need to be aware. How do we handle it? I mean, sometimes someone says to you something and you're like, oh, you get all bent out of shape. You have to realize that not everybody is functioning the same way that you think they're supposed to. Everybody's different.
Yeah. My brother always says, sis, don't you have any filters?
Yeah, but you're right. Some people don't have filters. And even if you have filters, what does that mean? I mean, you just choose to be cautious, whatever. Some are diplomatic, some not, some direct cut, shortcut, straightforward, whatever it is.
Boom, shoot from the hip.
That's right. Like, hey, shoot first, ask questions later. But these are, like, we laugh about it, but this reality of things. And the more we understand, that we live in a society and that, we share society, we share the world with others. And, you have to always be conscious, at least be conscious, be aware, be sensitive. And by the way, this goes to almost every other aspect of life, not just autism specifically, but autism is big. I mean, I think Mike is just coming back. Yeah. I think we're close with him. So hold on, let me take him back. Mike, we lost you, but we were talking good stuff about you, so it's all good. You'll get to hear this. You'll get to hear about this when you see the actual final cut. So,
okay.
But we were closing the show, but definitely, we enjoyed this. I mean, Doctor, go ahead. You do the honors.
Yeah, you were absolutely a gem, dropping nuggets of information, and in a way that everyone can understand, both those who are on the spectrum and trying to deal with navigating the waters, and those with whom they come into contact. You really laid it out very clearly, and everybody can benefit from it. And as Hurricane and I were just discussing, everybody is on the spectrum and everybody is dealing with somebody on the spectrum. And I mean, it's just plain good communication skills.
Absolutely. And in the case of people who are on the spectrum, we can learn to communicate in a way that's effective. It may not be in the same way that everyone else communicates, but we can learn to communicate effective. And that's why it is important to have these communities that have empathy for us, because as neurotypical people, you guys are always communicating. You're always talking to people. You're always interacting and in different spaces. And sometimes we're not, because we like to cordon ourselves off from major spaces because it's more comfortable to be somewhere quiet. Never threaten me with solitude. Because
solitary confinement would suit you quite nicely. Huh?
I'll be good. Well, you're going to be in a 10 by 10 box. Okay, I'm straight.
Works for me.
Works for me. I'm good.
Yes, I spent 2 years out in the country on a 10-acre ranch with a dog and a cat during COVID, and some of the best days of my life. I was like really good.
So Mike, before we part, you are part of an organization that helps people basically get employment, gainful, revenue and income, and really train them into the industry and specifically in the entertainment. What is the organization?
Absolutely. Let me tell you about it. The nonprofit that I'm working with at the moment is called YIC Unity. It is a 501c3, and that 501c3 his mission is to integrate and train adults with disabilities, specifically autistic, to acquire the necessary skills to assist them in securing careers within the entertainment industry, earning, and not just that, but earning a competitive wage. So we help them to train them, put them in very specific situations with companies that are actually doing things in the industry. Mm-hmm. And they will be getting gainful employment from here on in. I love this organization. I am a member board of trustee. I give them tips. They read my comments when I'm on Twitter, when I'm on LinkedIn. They're very, very tactile. They actually interact with the things that I discuss and talk about, especially when it comes to the entertainment industry, because that's what we're doing. We want to make sure. But we also understand that these young people are very specifically good at being in these spaces because they do focus on the work. There's very little starstruck behavior.
Yes.
Everybody's just there to do a job, and they always do that excellently. So the people who are the primary actors and stars and directors, and they can do their work, and they know that there's somebody that's there that's like, okay, I got this. I'm the best boom person you're going to have. I'm the best,
right.
Lighting, everybody there knows exactly what that person's going to come in, and that job's going to be done a certain way. So companies are learning more and more that, hey, this is a resource that we need to tap into. And these are brilliant human beings, and we need to treat them so that they can treat them in such a way so that they can take care of themselves, be comfortable, make sure that they can take care of their creature comforts and all the things that any other person would need to do. Hey, let's use this resource. And that's basically what this mission and goal is of the organization. It's YIC Unity. It's literally spelled out with those letters, .org, YICunity.org. And I can't say enough about this organization. It's just the real deal.
And we will post the information on the site where you can, the website and where you can reach out and learn more about YIC Unity.
Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely. Mike, we really do appreciate your insight and your communication, and we'd love to have you back to talk further about the subject. We were saying that we're going to bring Kia back to talk about it from the parent perspective and what it takes to raise a child that is such a gift as you are. So again, we do look forward to having you back again, and we will continue celebrating all of your successes. So thank you so much for joining us.
Okay. Well, I will be following both of you on social media because I really like you guys. You guys are very, very, very encouraging, very, very humbling.
Aspiring.
I like you guys. Very aspiring.
There you go.
Very aspiring.
I was paying attention.
There you go.
I am drawing inspiration from you all.
Love you, man.
Love you guys. Appreciate you having me. Thank you. I'm humbled and honored, and I can't wait to hang out with you guys again.
You have been listening to Hot Mike On the show Chatters That Matters, I am your show host, Cheryl Bryant Bruce, MD, the Celebrity Doc, with my co-host, Hisham Elenmonti, Hurricane H. Remember to like us, share us, and leave a comment. This show is for you, and we want to respond to your needs. We're here to educate, inform, and entertain you. Chatters That Matters, signing off.
God bless.
Chatterthatmatter.com.